Good evening. The subject of death in the Islamic tradition can best be gauged from a particular verse in the Quran. In that verse, the meaning in English is, "Verily, the death that you flee from will surely catch you." The reality is, death is inescapable, and death is a part of life. Life is only life because its opposite, death, has a meaning. Life has meaning and death has meaning. And death is one of those heavy topics, but it's also liberating, enlightening to the soul when you talk about it too, because it puts things into perspective. In the Islamic tradition, we talk about death and preparing for death and understanding the reality of death. Why, despite understanding that it's inevitable and that we go on to meet God, do we still cling to the world and try to stay alive at all costs? In preparing for death, we look at it from two different ways. You could call it the horizontal and the vertical way of preparing. Vertically preparing is a way of saying getting things right between you and God, realizing that you're not going to be in this world forever, that our time is all limited, no one makes it out of here alive, and to get things right with God, to consider one's relationship with God and making amends for any errors we've made in our life between us and God, having a good opinion of God, that He desires the best for us, and leaving this world having great yearning and longing for the divine presence. That is the vertical way of getting things right and preparing for death. On the horizontal level, there's a lot to be done. There is preparing for death horizontally between us and other human beings, in repairing damaged relationships, in returning rights owed to others. If we've slandered anyone, if we've gotten into a fight with someone, if there's bad blood between relatives, that as we are approaching the end of our life, which could be tomorrow, so we never really know when that's going to be, we make an effort to repair those damaged relationships. We return rights that we owe other people. We apologize. That is the horizontal preparation concerning us and other human beings. And then there's the horizontal preparation on a practical level, which is to make sure that we have a will, to make sure that we have set our affairs in order, to make sure that we have communicated to our family our wishes regarding resuscitation and things that we've been discussed now. These are some of the ways we look at preparing for death horizontally and vertically. A lot of the activities that go on in those last moments of death are actually activities from the family and friends. The person who is in the process of leaving this world in those final moments, they're fairly passive if they're in palliative care or in hospice or on their deathbed. But a lot of the activity is from family and friends. And in the Islamic tradition, it's highly encouraged to have the presence of family to remind that person of God's mercy and compassion, to remind them of God by mentioning God's name, by reciting the Quran, by praying for that person, by giving charity on their behalf, by reminding them of all of the good things they've experienced in life so that they leave this world in a good state, not in an agitated state. These are some of the guidelines we have for those attending the deceased as they're leaving the world. As the person leaves the world, their soul leaves their body, and that's an entirely different discussion of eschatology and what happens at the end of life. But to go back to that question I referred to in the beginning, how is it that believers in God, who believe in the inevitability of death and the meeting of God, may still cling to the world and hesitate in wanting to leave? And the answer, very briefly, is that God has placed within us the instinct to survive. He has placed within us the instinct to live in this world, to inhabit it and make it a place of dwelling for us and our offspring and future generations. Because of that being a part of our purpose here, we have instincts that God has given us for self-preservation. Even our emotions are for our own self-preservation, which is anger. You get angry so that you defend your rights and your loved ones, to protect yourself. And among those instincts is self-preservation, to stay alive. And that is not a sign that a person doesn't want to meet God or that they're hesitant. It's their instinct that God has given them. So one leaves this world and they may still cling and wish to stay longer, but not because they don't want to meet their Creator, but because of two things. Either they are clinging and trying to stay alive longer because they have loved ones, they have cares and concerns and things they want to attend to in this life that they feel are unfinished, or they want to meet God, but they're also worried what's going to happen. They may even know from their own tradition. In us, we have a detailed, rich tradition about what happens at the end of life. But a person may be hesitant, not because they don't wish to meet God, but they are not sure that they're in the right state. So we like to have these discussions, sometimes to remind ourselves that if we feel like that internally, we should examine why and address those points right now, so that when we come to that period, we won't have that hesitation. We will be more open and willing to transition, because in our belief system, in Islam, death is not the end. It is just the next stage in the journey. It is not lights out in a dark room. It is a richer part of the journey. It's like getting on the airplane or getting on the bus, and you journey to the next destination. So being prepared for that means to lighten your load, metaphorically, by not having too many burdens on your soul and on your back when you leave the world with the rights of other people, and to be lighter and fresh and ready for the journey to meet God.
Hi, my name is Mary Ann June. I am a member of the Unitarian Universalist Church in the east suburbs here. I'm not a minister, though. Our minister was unable to attend. The UU perspective. While Unitarian Universalism is non-creedal, meaning we hold no required common set of beliefs, UUs, or Unitarian Universalists, UUs uphold a shared set of principles. Pertinent to tonight's topic are the principles which affirm a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, and the principle that we affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person. In order to answer the big questions about life and death, UUs access many sources of wisdom, ranging from the wisdom of the world's religious traditions to humanist teaching to direct experience of the mystery and wonder of life. Each person is free to do this on their own, to conduct independent research and to practice self-reflection. But we also do have a curriculum called Facing Death with Life, which helps us start answering our own individual questions about death. The goal of this curriculum is for participants to develop a closer and more comfortable relationship with their own inevitable death. In other words, to experience death and dying as a healthy part of life, including the preparation, the moment of death, the grieving, and the living on. I'd like to address 3 points which were shared by Joe to try to cover in relationship to this curriculum. So the first point of the 3 is, how do Unitarian Universalists develop an understanding of the concept of death? We start by examining a variety of perspectives on death and dying from many cultural and religious perspectives. If anyone's interested, after the program, I brought some samples. They're quotes from many different wisdom sources, and we start with that. We identify those that speak most to you, reconsidering the ones that you're not comfortable with. Ask yourself why some of them feel comfortable and some don't. Reflect on personal experiences of death, grief, and bereavement, and share and listen to the reflections of others. From this foundation, each person begins to define and continuously refine over the course of their lives their own personal understanding of the meaning of death. The second question or point to cover would be, what is the UU perspective on making end-of-life decisions? In 1988, Unitarian Universalists developed a social justice resolution titled The Right to Die with Dignity. In connection with this resolution, the Facing Death with Life curriculum encourages us to understand and proactively specify our unique end-of-life medical choices, specifically advanced directives and durable power of attorney for healthcare. The curriculum also encourages us to design our own memorial services, to write our own obituaries, basically to practice and get comfortable with ideas of things that happen at end of life that many of us might shy away from. In addition, the resolution called to support legislation that would create legal protection for the right to die with dignity in accordance with one's own choice, including safeguards against abuses by those who would hasten death contrary to an individual's desires. Almost 30 years after the resolution was developed, the Facing Death with Life curriculum encourages Unitarian Universalists to ask tough questions and grapple with these, to consider and discuss the right of self-determination in dying, applying critical thinking and reflection to decide to what degree you support it, whether unequivocally or identifying those conditions or limitations you would put on that right. The third, sorry, and
You still have a minute.
Okay. The third point was what is the UU position on death in the here and now? These words from Khalil Gibran, presented at the start of the Facing Death with Life curriculum, beautifully sum up the UU position. If you would indeed behold the spirit of death, open your heart wide unto the body of life. For life and death are one, even as the river and sea are one. The UU principles of promoting a free and independent search for truth and meaning and affirming the inherent worth and dignity of every person encourage each UU to thoroughly explore and continually refine their personal understanding of death, and in the spirit of community, to bring death into the normal conversation with others, to live being aware that death is part of life. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Symons and I'm a devotee of Hindu Jain Temple on the executive committee to work with Hindu traditions. And according to the Hindu and Jain, we have a very broad thinking about death. Death is nothing but it is just a change in our life. If you think about that, God has given us the life. When we come to the earth, we say that, oh, somebody is born. From day one, we want to teach him some good habits, to do some good works, and he learns the traditions. He learns the traditions from the family, and they try to do the best of their knowledge and try to improve, because we trust everything is done by God. We are just like the toys of God. Whatever He wants us to do, we are doing on His will. And we don't know what will be the exact time of death. Maybe I will die right now, or I may live 90 more years. Nobody knows. So it is a thinking in our mind that death, but we not the place that we have to live forever. Our soul never dies. Only the body dies, and the soul itself goes in another body. So that's what we try to teach from the childhood to face the truth. And at the end of the speech, I would like to say a good phrase that is in Hindu religion. Astoma sadgamaya tamasoma jyotirgamaya mrityuma amritam gamaya. So brief explanation of this phrase is that, oh God, oh Lord, take us from untruth to the truth. Give us the light from the darkness of our life. We are here for some purposes. So if we get the light of our life, then only we can do the good works. Our actions will be dependent on that knowledge and light. So when we will die, our death should not be the death. It should be immortal. So that everybody should remember me for long and long time, like we love God. God never dies. So is our soul. Soul never dies. Our action should be like that, that we should enjoy our life and do something good for others. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Susan Burke. I'm a member of the Baha'i faith. I am not a clergyman of any type, and because the Baha'i faith does not have clergy. We have an administrative body where a number of Baha'is live, but there is no clergy. We study and learn and pray on our own. And I want to start, I was thinking about this. I had to think about the tension between life and death that we talked about. And I wanted to read a quote about, that sort of gives a spiritual perspective of Baha'is and death. And it says, to consider that after the death of the body, the spirit perishes is like imagining that a bird in a cage will be destroyed if the cage is broken. So the bird has nothing to fear from the destruction of the cage. Our body is like the cage, and the spirit is like the bird. If the cage becomes broken, the bird will continue to exist. Its feelings will be even more powerful, its perceptions greater, and its happiness increased. When it comes to end-of-life decisions, an individual Baha'i would turn to basically two sources: the expertise of a competent medical professional and our sacred writing and prayer. And you would act based on the advice of the doctor, but we also believe that prayer can heal as well. So you're encouraged to pray. Let's see. The basic instruction in the writings to one who is ill is to find a doctor whom confidence can be placed, to follow his advice, and put one's trust in God through prayer. So, it would either be the person themselves or their family members. There's no specific guidance on whether you have an advance directive or those kinds of things. I know we have one in our family, and I know others that do. So that's, there's no specific guidelines on that. There was one of the questions that was proposed in the initial planning was about the primary tension, between the loss of a person, and the person, the loss of that person. And I think that is the tension. The tension, I think, sometimes with death is that you're going to lose that person's companionship. Someone mentioned that, you have things that you still need to accomplish or you want to accomplish. I often think of myself, I have a special needs son. I think about someday I'm going to have to leave him here, and wonder what's going to happen with them, no matter what kind of plans or preparations are made. So that's kind of where that tension comes in, because we know that we're going to die, and that you know that it's a messenger of joy, and that you continue, but you do also have people that you leave here behind as well. And the last thing, philosophically, you know, I think the biggest thing about death for most people is that it's the last big mystery. You know, the Imam talks about that. We don't know. We hope we've lived a good life. We've done all the things that we think we need to do. We try, but in the end, we don't know what, you know, our personal life is going to be. And I think that's where that tension comes up. I've been learning a lot lately, I guess, as we get older and we deal with our parents and we deal with friends. I've been learning a lot lately about that stress and that tension, and how you have to, you know, think like the advanced directives. My mother-in-law had a do not resuscitate and those kind of things. I can't tell you how many calls we got from the hospital up in Maine about what should we do, what should we do. It's like, well, she has the advanced directive, but it's just not that cut and dry. You know, if anyone's ever experienced that, it's not. I mean, I started believing that means if you're crashing, they aren't going to do anything. But it's all those little steps in between, you know, when you're sick. So, you know, you start to learn more about it. But the main thing is that you pray, you read from your holy scriptures, and you seek the advice of competent medical professionals.
My name is Ed Shack. I'm the pastor of Monroeville United Methodist Church. And I noticed on my little sign there it says Protestant. I am really loath to sit down and say this is what all Protestants believe. It's a very, very big umbrella. In all honesty, I'm not even sure that I feel that I can talk about United Methodists and where we all come from, as I'm looking at some colleagues in the room. But there is a group, our general conference that comes together and speaks for the United Methodist Church. And there is a social principle that we've come together, and there's a couple paragraphs. And what I'd like to do is start with that, and then share a little bit of my own thoughts, depending upon how much 5 minutes are left. From the social principle, what it says is, while we applaud medical science for efforts to prevent disease and illness and for the advances in treatment that extend meaningful life of human beings, we recognize that every mortal life will ultimately end in death. Death is never a sign that God has abandoned us, no matter what the circumstances of that death might be. As Christians, we must always be prepared to surrender the gift of mortal life and claim the gift of eternal life through the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ for Christians. Care for dying persons is part of our stewardship of the divine gift of life when cure is no longer possible. We encourage the use of medical technologies to provide palliative care at the end of life when life-sustaining treatments no longer support the goals of life and when they have reached their limits. There is no moral or religious obligation to use these when they impose undue burdens or extend the process of dying. Dying persons and their families are free to discontinue treatments when they cease to be of benefit to the patient. We recognize the agonizing personal and moral decisions faced by the dying, their physicians, their families, their friends, and their faith community. And we urge that decisions faced by the dying be made with thoughtful and prayerful consideration by the parties involved, with medical, pastoral, and the other appropriate counseling. We further urge that all persons discuss with their families, their physicians, and their pastoral counselors their wishes for care at the end of life, and provide advanced directives for such care when they are not able to make the decisions for themselves. Even when one accepts the inevitability of death, the Church and society must continue to provide faithful care, including pain relief, companionship, support, spiritual nurture for the dying person in the hard work of preparing for death. While we encourage and support the concept of hospice care, whenever possible at the end of life, faithful care does not end at death, but continues during bereavement as we care for grieving families. We reject euthanasia and any pressure upon the dying to end their lives. God has continued to love and purpose for all persons, regardless of health. We affirm laws and policies that protect the rights and dignity of the dying. So that's the statement officially. If my own journey, how much time? All right, well, I can do that. My own journey went through three kidney transplant surgeries with my son Matthew a number of years ago. We lost him at the end of that after the last one that was there. And so there were many times throughout that process where we wrestled with, what is going to bring good life? What's the difference between, there's a difference between quantity and quality, and discerning where God would want us to be. And honestly, I found immense help and care, not only from the staff, the physicians, the church, which actually ended up being Monroeville United Methodist Church. The bishop sent me back there 30 years later, and all of the support business around. And I wrestled with, I think the question at the end was, can I live with this? If it doesn't work out the way I want it to work out, do I feel that I've done everything to support myself? And that was kind of where I went with that. I'd also say that I've decided that it is not death that scares me, it's the dying part that I'm really not crazy about. And in the Christian faith, we believe in death and resurrection. It's a way of saying that we face the suffering and we face the death with the knowledge and the understanding that that death is a transformation point. The beyond the transformation is mystery, but it is that transformation that really is all of life. And for me, the work of getting ready to prepare for that last transformation when I let everything go are all the little deaths that I do in my life. When I have to let go of different things, whether it's in my own personal life, to let go of the unhealthy behaviors that we all end up having, the things to try to keep and live a healthy life, to let go of, in a couple of years, I'm going to be letting go of my daughter when she goes to college. How we learn to let go of those different things and experience the transformation that life continues, I think is one way that we learn to trust that God is there. And that when that time comes at the end, I hope that I can make that transition. Like Joe, I'm not ready. I'll be the first to, but I'm working on it. I've watched people as I've journeyed with them, and I've seen some of the great saints of the church. I know we always lift up the pastors and all of the clergy, but I've got to tell you, some of the most faithful people I've ever met are the people that I've walked with in the churches who have been there. And I remember the one lady when I was in my first church, and she was dying of cancer, and I got the call that I was to go to the hospital. And I had no idea, I was just a student, I had no idea what I was going to say to her. And she walked in, I walked into the room, and she looked at me, she obviously knew I was terrified. I'm a young guy, I don't know what I'm going to say to you. And she said, Pastor, she said, I just want you to know, I've been here all the way through my life. I've got scars all over my body. I can't show you those, it's not appropriate. But I just want you to know that God got me through all of those. God's going to get me through this too. And it was just a wonderful letting go. That's what I want to be.
Thank you very much to our panelists. We are open for questions.
I just wanted to say something to you. I worked in healthcare. I worked in long-term care for 30 years or so, and probably longer, I can't remember. But and you can have, you don't have to tell them to stop feeding tubes or stop IVs. They come out, they go bad, they come out naturally. You can just make the decision with your doctors and your family when it does become, you can see it's hopeless, then say, don't reinsert them. Because, you can discontinue the life-preserving things when it's time. You can start them. Maybe they will help. I've seen miraculous cures. Yeah, people come back. You turn off the respirator and they still live. It's up to God. But once you know, once everybody said no, you're not going to get better, and you know they wouldn't want to live like that. You can say, when they come out, don't reinsert them.
No, I appreciate that, and that there's a time when they might come out and so forth. I
They
think
did come out by themselves.
right. So though, the question in terms of, the ethics and the religiosity of the decision to say, no, don't reinsert it, right? We've made this plan that we want to have the feeding tube in, and obviously, there's an individual decision depending on what the other parts of the situation are, that it's seen as okay, and that's the way you're choosing to go forward, given the agonizing decision to not continue. But again, it's up to the family members if they're the ones making the decision, or the person themselves if they're able or whatever it might be. But I appreciate that they're sort of natural stopping points, maybe if that's good language, I'm not sure. But thank you.
Related to that question, then I was looking at this post form, looking at three choices, or this limited additional post treatment and complete comfort measures only. Someone has filled out a post form, and they said they want for treatment, and presumably if a tooth comes out, we're all going to be put back in. How's that work?
Well, it's every means possible. Embracing heroic measures, and that's what some families want. And I've encountered people who hear that to choose otherwise, they think that's this is a terrible thing, that they're sick. You want to kill these people. But, things do happen. Sometimes food keeps coming in, there's not being utilized, and they ask for it. So this happens, and the weight of the decision is, well, I made that call. It put in place, and it's just informing people that things happen. These are realities, and it's just walking them through that process, so they have a clear understanding. And if they don't know what their loved one wanted, or they're not able to communicate that anymore, there's a burden. And the role is the hospice chaplain is to carry that burden.
Please excuse, I would like to ask Mr. I'm not even going to say his name right. Please excuse if this is, I just was very curious. I think you said that when you die, your soul goes to another body?
Right.
Okay. Why and how long can that go on forever?
I cannot reply your question because nobody has seen that. I mean, nobody has seen that. But this is a process of revolution, The soul never moves. God is everywhere. We are just part of the God. We are just a part of the God. And our body moves to other place, but soul stays there, same place. Body, when we die, only our body dies, not the soul. We pick up the body, and the soul is still staying there. So that is not moving away. If you are here in Monroeville Library, you cannot be in any other place. But your thoughts can go anywhere through the universe. That is the soul. Your soul can see everything you have the knowledge. But body cannot see. That is a limited thing.
Does it always go to a human, or can it go to an animal, or?
In every life, it is the same thing going on. They are like trees, they have the life. animals are moving, but the trees have their life. Or the leaves are green. After some time they are gone. Some leaves will fall down and there will be new leaves. Who bring them there? That is their part. That is part of this. We don't know.
I think I'm going to direct this to Reverend Ed, but the rest of you are welcome to nod your head as well. It's kind of a curiosity question. My 91-year-old mother-in-law who's not well recently considered starving herself to fast. Is that allowed?
I think in the statement they were saying that the overall statement is that they discourage that's no.
Okay.
In my these journeys are so personal. I'm not sure that if I'm sitting in her shoes down the line, I might not think about that too. But I do think that there's a stewardship of time. There's a journey where we work through. I would not pull away something. When I was with my son, it was one thing to decide to let something go. It's another thing to pull away something that body needs to live. Now you're actually acting in a way that's bringing about the life versus just letting it move through as opposed to this. I don't know, but also sometimes with some diseases, cancer, there's a place where suddenly they lose their appetite. I mean, it is that way. So it's a hard thing to sit down and judge. It's a journey that as I've walked with folks, it's a very personal journey. And one that I always walk with a lot of grace and hope that they know it.
I worked in health for 20 years, and one of the times the person will just stop eating. They know the outcome they have to be, and they stop eating. And even if they have an advance directive, a lot of times the family doesn't want to follow the advance directive. They want to put the IV in, or whatever. And that's the problem is the person taking care of them. The family doesn't want to go along with the advance directive. The person will stop eating themselves. They're starving, but they want, they're not going to eat. You can't force them to eat.
There's a medical aspect of that. The fact is, people as they get older and when they're on the diet box, they don't feel hungry. So they're not, when you don't put IV fluid or a feeding tube, they're not like you feeling like I'm hungry, I didn't eat for 6 hours. They don't have that. And that's why you see a lot of the older folks, whether the weight lose weight gradually, without necessarily suffering, but the family is watching, are like painfully watching this and want to act on it. And a lot of time feeding tube is just prolong the process and then complications comes out that infected, you get aspiration. But if you have full code, like you for your question, if you have full code and the feeding tube come out, the next step is to replace it. And it's not just because it came out, you don't replace it. You have to keep doing it if you are seeking a full treatment. But yeah, so like the answer to your question is, even if she want to eat something, she doesn't have the appetite, and she doesn't have the hunger, she might suffer. And that's why a lot of people, like, when they want to make their decision, you should make it not the people around you, because they're thinking that, like, I said, they are the ones that's suffering. Oh, it's 12 hours, the hospital don't feed them. It's not, even if you feed them, they're not going to eat. So that's what there's, even if you have trouble swallowing, they give you something called pleasure feeding. Just a little bit of, like, something that you can sweet, just so you can get something, but it's not to keep you going in the longer run, it's just for pleasure.
It's a comfort measure for the family.
Yeah.
Because we always, stop that. But your taste buds change too, so things aren't appetizing even if you want to eat.
I think it depends on the person. I can fast and it doesn't bother me. My husband, he gets sick if he doesn't eat for so many hours, so I'm sure my mother, they were almost abusive in the way they fed her. She did have hospice, and I recommend hospice to everybody. She had it for like 10 years, but she avoided a lot of painful tests because things were wrong with her. They couldn't cure it. There's nothing they could do about it anyway. But they almost force-fed her. She did say she never wanted a tube, and she did have horrible swallowing difficulties. I think you have to offer them food. If they don't wanna eat it, you should not force them. And I think what you
Yeah,
said.
there's
too,
an
just give
aspiration
them a
risk,
taste.
yeah.
Yeah, just offer it, but don't force it, and I think they pretty much, they were verbally abusive and really, you know, that, yeah, that happens. So, and I've seen people, when they stop the feeding and everything else, and they die very peaceably. They're not suffering, it's very peaceful, and that's why I want to go. When it's time, but I do want them to try everything first, and then if it doesn't work, if I'm not gonna get better, just let me go.
I knew a 99-year-old lady who lived very long on little sips of Ensure, sugar packets, and heavy cream. and she would just take little sips, and they would feed her. She's been home, so they would give her a meal every time she'd come out, look at it, and leave. And she was maintaining her life through very little, and but it was a struggle for the family.
Yeah.
And the caretakers to say, why aren't you eating? Why aren't you eating? And it's a hard process.
I know certain traditions have certain rituals after the death. Have any of your traditions started thinking about, like, I guess they're calling it the green death now, about, no embalming? There's a place in Washington that's composting bodies. Have any of your traditions considered some of that?
Well, our tradition doesn't embalm, so we have been thinking about that.
Yeah.
I don't know specifically, and part of it is we also are, like all of us, are in the world of what's legal within the state in which you live, right? So there are these balances to it. I mean, I guess the way I respond is would I officiate that, right? So because the Reform Jewish basically say, if you do this, then, you're no longer a rabbi, right? So would I officiate? Yeah, the idea for Judaism is dust to dust. It's in a natural process. While some Jews choose to be cremated, we largely don't do that. Very largely don't do that for two reasons. One is because of the natural process, the other is because of the Holocaust. And so the idea of a more natural and sort of quick coming back to the earth from which we were taken would seem to me to be in keeping with Jewish law and practice.
Well, that's the same with Islam.
Baha'i faith is the same as well. There's no embalming, and actually we've had several burials at the Greek cemetery in Verona.
Yes.
I stood in the pouring rain in April for once, but it was ridiculously wonderful. I mean, his son had made wooden caskets that they brought him in, and I don't know, and it's no bulk, it's just, it's wild, and it's really nice.
But not all the cemeteries allow you to do this. It's called green burials.
Yes.
Not all the city of Pittsburgh is not allowed. There's one in Monroeville. Yes. The Monroeville is so.
Like
Green
green
cemetery.
Follow the rules, yeah.
buried in the shroud.
There's Rhoda Penfield that you're
Well,
talking about.
yeah, that's,
Yeah, as part of that curriculum, again, each church that decides to deliver that curriculum is encouraged to set up visits with both hospice care people as well as a visit to either crematorium or burial, funeral home. So we actually did this 2 years ago when we visited the green burial location.
And how about cremation? Do you advocate on that? Okay.
we don't cremate. It's the same as what Rabbi Barber said. It's a natural process, and we believe that the body should go back to nature.
Nothing we don't use.
Up to the individual.
I'm just curious about what the Hindu tradition is for burial.
Excuse me?
What is your tradition for burial?
It's because Hindus were living in the forest from the beginning. There were a lot of wood they decided to cremate. That was the cheap and best way to destroy the body. And since that time, we trust in cremation. But depending on the weather, circumstances, we can do whatever we have the preferences to put the body back to the lake. Like sometimes we don't have wood, but how can we cremate? Now there is electrical things are going on everywhere, but if there are no resources, what can we do? Then dig it up and put the body into that. And it's not, that is also written there. You can bury it, you can cremate it, or whatever you like to do, you can do that. That's what Hinduism is, very flexible religion. It always gives you the independence of do the things according to your thoughts. You should have the knowledge what to do. So that's why we always focus on that you should have the knowledge, you should have the education. So that we want to win the death. Like, most of the religion, I'm scared of the death. No, we don't scare of the death. We know that it is the truth. Someday we have to die. Only the thing we don't know when we need to die. And when the time will come, we will be gone. Why to worry about it?
I was just going to say that also having some legal paper work not only helps for the medical people, but if you have more than one child, that can be interesting at the end of life. I'm sure Joe has had interesting situations when 3 of the kids want to do it this way and 2 of the kids say, oh my goodness, it could be awful. You having it written down? Time for a couple more questions if anybody has them. Something I wanted to say that I meant to mention before, and listening to Ed made me think about it too. When we talked about the stress and the tension. In the Baha'i faith, we see a lot of things like that as just tests. That when these things happen, what the person learns, the person who survives, what you give a person. Someone's death can give you a lot. It helps you learn, even your own. Can give you a lot to help you learn about yourself and about your spirituality and those kinds of things. And I was thinking of that as you talked about your son and the things you've gained in ways that you would never have expected to gain from such a horrible experience.
What I've discovered, it's really sacred space. And now going in to be with people as they journey. I think sometimes it is some of the most powerful moments that we have on earth, because what you do really matters. And I think at that point, sometimes people turn around to say things that really needed to be said a long, long time ago, and they never got a chance to. And so I've watched families reconcile. I've watched people call people they haven't talked to for years, and really find a place of sense of peace, both the person who's passing and the family that's around them. And actually, when you were talking, someone was talking about what do you do as someone dies. A little bit different, but oftentimes I've been there at bedside, and we just all join hands around the bed and we pray. Powerful.
I think culturally, unfortunately, death is kind of hidden away from people in a way that you don't see it, you don't hear about it, and it's our tradition actually prefers to talk about it, and I think probably most of the tradition because just keep you straight, to keep you ahead. And I think that's what happened. A lot of people are not prepared physically, psychologically, and if you don't make this decision, it's really open door for a lot of problems for you. Because when they make decision for you, then they're making abandon you, and they're not gonna be making the best decision because they're making it emotionally and not logically. That's why when I ask a patient at 65-year-old, that's when we usually start asking people about their living will. It's like, why? When they're dying right away. So it's good to be prepared. And when I saw the doctor first time, I said, I'm DNR. I'm still up. I'm DNR. It's good to know even when people know around you talk about it. And I think it's unfortunately, when we talk about death, people think we're depressed, and sometimes it's all the way around.
I have something I would like to offer you folks and healthcare professionals in the room, if you want to use it. The only thing that someone said to me when my mom passed away that I found to be meaningful and helpful was she said to me that the funeral preparations and service that I made for my mom was my last gift to her.
Well, thank you to our panelists for coming out. Great discussion. I want to remind everyone about a few upcoming programs. In October, the first Thursday of October, we are having our Ask the Clergy panel with Imam. That is not a full panel, but we're having different representatives from each of the faith traditions come out the first Thursday of every month at 7 o'clock in this room. Just ask general questions about that faith. So you can find a full listing in the wooden sign holders right outside the gallery space if you'd like to see who is up on the program. We also have 2 events that are coming up as part of the, it's not Ministerium anymore.
The Human Dignity.
The Human Dignity Project. The first is We Are All Related, an artist talk with Andrea London. That is being co-sponsored by the Office of Public Art. This is a local artist who has focused on doing artwork around marginalized communities in Pittsburgh, so she will be out to talk about her project. And then on Sunday, September 29th, we're having Echo of the Park, a book lunch and poetry reading with a translator on hand, and I believe the original poet will be Skyping in, so please be sure to check out these programs, and thank you all for coming out.
Thank you.